Splendid. Excellent. Well, thank you for coming. We've got nine people, which is wonderful for the first one of these. The idea of these, a few weeks back, maybe a month back now, we had a meeting type thing in iMeditate to talk about possibilities and where the group could go and what we could do. And I've been playing with that in my mind on and off, and it didn't quite feel like the right place to necessarily do some of that. So I want to keep iMeditate literally about the meditation, I think. So I thought we'll do this, and we'll do it with just short little blasts, little like online micro events, half hour, where sometimes there'll be just practical exercises, sometimes it'll be some talking and then going into an exercise. And it's based on the premise and the idea that a lot of the time we can get stuck and feel like the change we want can't happen because we either don't have a choice or we have no experience of not experiencing that. So for instance, tonight is about emotional pain. And how do you know you can kind of be free of it if you've only ever experienced that pain? So the idea of these events is to give some thoughts, some ideas, some concepts to help people with the different subjects that we're looking at, but also to then give an experience which will be based within hypnosis, NLP, meditation, the different techniques that I use, to give you an experience of feeling a change, a shift in whatever that is we're exploring. So tonight with emotional pain, I really hope for all of you, by the end of this, whatever area we choose to focus on, that you choose to focus on, that you can feel different about it. And this is only a short session, but if you can feel different about it in a short period of time, you now then know, and your mind knows, that you don't have to feel the way you've been feeling about it, which is the first step of change, is knowing that you can make that change. And that's why we've called it your first step to a happier you, because it's all about that first step. It's just showing you that you can feel different about it, showing you that using a few techniques, you can feel differently about situations, look at different situations differently. And sometimes just that alone will be enough to help facilitate that change. So with some of these sessions, you might bring something to it and find that just this session alone is just that pivoting point, gives just enough leverage for you to start your own momentum and to make those shifts and changes. And that's what I'm hoping for. There's not be anything difficult, nothing complicated. When we get to the practical stuff, it is a case of follow the instructions, the best of your ability. That's it. I haven't said this for a while, but at different times I will ask you to visualize, and we can all do it. Everyone can do it. And if I say, think of a snooker ball, I've changed it. Think of a snooker ball. What color would that snooker ball be? Just shout them out.
Red.
Red.
Red, red. Yeah, that's it. Whatever you just did to tell me that is visualization. So don't worry if I ask you to picture or imagine stuff. Whatever you just did is exactly what I'm asking you to do. So today we're going to look at, just for a little while, I'm going to talk about emotional pain. Some of what I say might feel, because sometimes it can, and I know when I was learning this stuff, it felt sometimes a little uncomfortable, like, well, I'm but the reason I'm recording this is so you can go back and revisit and re-listen to any part of this. And also the techniques that I'm going to use in these short sessions are techniques that once we've gone through them, you don't necessarily need me or the audio or the video to be able to work those techniques for yourself. They're exercises in taking control of your thinking, taking control of your mind, that you can practice by yourself. So the idea is that these sessions give some information and something practical that not only can you experience from this, but you can then use for yourselves as well. Is that all sounding good?
Yep, certainly is.
Fabulous. In that case, I'll make a start into this evening, which is obviously when everyone joined, I asked kind of something that if you could change what would that be? And I also asked some, you know, if there were no restrictions, no limits, how would you be living your life? What would you be doing? And that's, I mean, that is partly so is the stuff that we do in this group is relevant. And emotional hurt is something that pretty well most of us experience and carry at some time, at some point in life, whether that's for a short period of time or whether it's something that stays with us for a long period of time. And that emotional hurt can come from abuse, from relationships splitting up, from the loss of loved ones. There are so many different ways that we can be hurt emotionally. And the thing is, with physical pain, if we break an arm, there's an injury, and whilst the pain's there, there's usually something that we can either poke or prod or have scanned and looked at that tells us and shows us why we're still experiencing that pain. Not with all physical pain, but with a lot of physical pain, there's usually a very tangible cause. If you break your leg, it's going to hurt until it's fixed, and sometimes it hurts after that. When it comes to emotional pain, the rules change a little, because we have an initial event, we have the moment or moments that cause that pain, and then they stop. Those moments happen and they stop. So if we take, for example, a breakup, most of us have split up with somebody at some point and felt possibly hurt from it. There's the moment that there's the breakup, but the moment that event stops, there is nothing out there to cause that pain for you. At the moment of that breakup, we feel the hurt, we feel the pain. But when it's gone, the cause of that pain no longer exists. The actual event, you know, if you break an arm, the break is still there causing you pain. The actual event that causes the pain, when it comes to an emotional pain, doesn't exist after that time. We break a heart and the moment of pain is over in that moment. It's no longer happening to you. So if it's not happening to you, what's actually occurring? Well, we can, and as is the case when it comes to emotional pain, is we quite often, just because it's the way we tend to think, the way we're conditioned, we have emotional pain and we look out there for who it was that caused that pain. It was them that made me feel like this. They made me feel like this. They did that, and now I feel like this. So we look out there to put the blame or the root cause of that emotional pain onto other people. The reality is that the only person that keeps that pain alive is ourselves. We are the people.
Sorry, Rob.
That's all right. If I just mute.
Can you mute me? So I can't touch it off.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. So emotional pain, although there's a moment in the real world where it happens, after that moment, the only person that actually keeps that pain alive is us, ourselves. We are responsible for that pain continuing. When the event happens, we react to it based upon our learning, based upon our experiences, with the choices that we have. So in going back to a breakup, we choose to feel hurt, we choose to feel rejected, we choose to feel cheated by the actions of somebody else or by the action of splitting up. But we don't have to feel that way. We're conditioned to feel that way. We're told that's how we should feel, but we don't actually have to feel that way. You could choose in that situation to not be bothered. Do you know what? It's over. That's fine. Done. You could choose to actually be amused. I'm not sure how in that situation, but maybe there's something about it. You just smile and go, yeah, you know what? That's the universe just doing its thing. And that's a wonderful thing. But based on our resources that we have at the time, unconsciously we make choices on how we choose to react. That reaction is often based upon how we've either been taught, witnessed others, or experienced that similar situation in the past. And that can be, I mean, that could be quite a thing to get our heads around, that we're the ones that keep that pain alive, and not the event, not the people or the other people involved in it. But if we take, for instance, a clown, and there's 9 of us in this group, and I imagine that if there were 9 of us in this group and I asked each of you your thoughts on a clown, some people might be a bit like, oh, clowns. Other people are like, yeah, they're all right. Other people go, they're a bit odd. We all have different reactions to how we feel about a clown. Some of us will find them boring. Some of us will find them silly. And others will regard them with fear. If it was a clown, the person out there that created that experience of fear, we would all experience fear when we saw a clown. But we do not. We all react differently. The same with heights. Some of us can look at climbing a mountain and think, wow, that looks amazing. Look how high that is. Others can look at it and feel sick just at the thought of even attempting to walk up it. It's not the thing out there that causes that discomfort, that fear, that pain. It's how we are choosing, albeit unconsciously, to react to that pain. And the first aspect of making powerful personal change and letting go of past pain and past hurt is the realization that you alone create your feelings. Nobody out there creates your feelings for you. They cannot. Your feelings are created by your choice of reaction to any one situation. That's why some people can witness horrendous things and never be bothered by it, because their way of reacting allows them to distance themselves from it, allows them to put it down, where other people, they haven't learned that technique. They haven't learned that way of thinking. It's not how they've grown. Therefore, they might really struggle with the same situation. But these are just techniques. They're ways of thinking. And because they're ways of thinking, we can learn them. And often we can learn them quite quickly. Now, there's a part of our minds that doesn't actually know the difference between what you're imagining. And I've said this in I Meditate as well. There is a part of your mind that it really doesn't know the difference between what you imagine, what you dream, and what you actually do. So they wired people up and they record the brain as they're drinking a cup of coffee. He says miming so he can have a cup of coffee. So and on the machine, it would show certain spikes and certain parts of my brain reacting to that action. And if they asked me to imagine lifting up and drinking that coffee, the same parts of the brain will respond and react also. It doesn't know the difference between the physical reality experience and that which is being imagined. And that's why if there's a horror movie or for me, I'm not good on things, you know, like ER and those like hospital programs where you see people having operations and someone will come in with a spike through their foot and my foot reacts and cringes as though I've got a spike kind of through my foot and they're pulling it out and you're just like, ugh. That's because a part of your brain doesn't know the difference between what you're watching on that program and what's actually really happening. So we react accordingly. And when an event causes us emotional pain, we generate how we feel based, as I said, on those resources that we have at the time, how we've learned to deal with that. After that moment, our minds keep that pain alive every time we replay it, because a part of us doesn't know the difference between the actual event and remembering the event. And in your mind, every time it replays that situation, and we've done a little bit, in fact, we did this on with the meditation on Sunday, we anchored a feeling to a gesture. But feelings can be anchored to thoughts. So by playing things over and over in our mind, reliving the situation over and over again, even if it gets a habit and we're doing it unconsciously, we're anchoring, associating those people, those thoughts with those feelings. And again, there's that part of us that does not know the difference between the dream and the reality. And so it triggers the feelings as if they're still happening. Every time you relive that situation, you're reliving those feelings. The other thing with memories is your imagination over time embellishes your memories, your what you think happened. Our minds do not make a photorealistic video recording of every event in our lives. What happens is our memories will pinpoint certain moments in an event, and then after that, our imagination fills in the gaps. So, for instance, I remember I've got a scar on my hand. Where is it? This one. And I still think I remember that vividly. But what I remember is falling and a handkerchief that was all blooded in the back of my granddad's car. Everything else in between that is more than likely filled in by my imagination. And this is why if somebody's hypnotized and recalls a crime or something that happened to them in the case of abuse or something, that evidence is not submittable even in court, because we know that the memory does not hold an exact detail for detail account of what happened to us or what was said. It embellishes and it fills in the gaps. A bit like, I remember doing a storytelling workshop, and the storyteller said what you do is you break your story down to 7 key points, and then everything else is just to let your imagination go and fill in the gaps. And that's pretty well how our memories work. So our imagination will embellish over time that memory. And then there's a part of us that doesn't necessarily want to take responsibility for that pain that we have. And there's no blame with any of this. We're just doing what we've learned, what we've been conditioned to do based on our experiences that our life has given us. They are, if you only know one way to crack a nut, then you're just going to keep using that same way. It might not be the best way, but we'll still do it. Whereas if somebody introduces you to another way of working with that, then you find that you have choices. And once you have choices, then you can change how you feel about certain situations. Some people spend a lifetime trying to put right situations that they perceive as being out there, things that happened that are out there. Yet the only change we need to make, the only actual change we need to make, is how we choose to react to that memory. Because the event isn't happening anymore. The memory, which is imperfect, is the only thing that keeps triggering those pains. It might be a face that triggers the memory. It might be somebody mentions a name that triggers a memory. I worked with a client a few months back who kind of went into panic attacks every time she heard the name John because of an incident that had happened to her. But that incident wasn't happening, but every time she heard that name, she reacted as though it was. So what we can do is we can go within and we can change how we look at, how we relate to, and how we present to ourselves those memories. At the end of the day, memories are not things. They are actually just your thoughts. And your thoughts about a situation that will not in reality have occurred quite how you remember it. So our memories, because they do not record exactly, they remember the key moments and fill in the gaps. The rest of it's imagination. And your imagination is a huge, powerful tool. And you can use that imagination to change those thoughts, to change those memories. And that's the wonderful thing about taking that responsibility and going, do you know what? I understand that my thoughts about a certain situation create certain chemical releases in my brain that then make me feel hurt, that make me feel upset about a certain situation. But it's your thoughts about that situation that then trigger the emotional reaction. And in knowing that, we can work at changing those images, changing those representations. A classic one, which I think we're going to do a fears and phobias session at some point, is with a phobia. people who have a phobia of, say, spiders, you can change and get rid of that phobia if they've had it all their lives within about 20 minutes, just by getting them to go inside and changing the image that triggers the emotional reaction. And once they've changed it, and they've repeated that half a dozen times, so as when they think of spiders, rather than going to the monster big thing that looks like it's about to eat them, they go to the spider with Doc Martens and a Mohican kind of giggling inanely. I don't know, whatever image makes it funny. When that's the image that comes to their head every time they speak of spiders, not the scary one, suddenly the emotional reaction stops. And rather than, a friend of mine had it with dentists. I remember years ago, she used to freak out at the dentist, but really need to have an appointment. And a friend of mine took her through a technique, very simple technique, where the dentist in her mind looked like Mickey Mouse. And the dentist had to ask her not to giggle so much in the chair whilst he was doing procedures, but she wasn't worried. She wasn't afraid anymore, because the scary image that had triggered the emotional reaction had been changed to an image she just couldn't take seriously and made her giggle. And we can do that with fears and phobias, and we can do that with our memories and our emotions, changing, distancing, altering our inner representation, how we present that memory, that feeling to ourselves. By changing that, using our imagination, we can make changes to how we react to things of the past, to people connected with things in the past. That's completely expanded and gone off track. And we can set up new anchors as well. That's the thing. We can set up new triggers and new anchors. So whereas a person who's going on that instance of the name John, you know, that client had one person in their life that had created all that pain and suffering that they've carried with them. But there were plenty of other people they knew called John who were really nice people who would never harm them, and actually would probably go and punch somebody on the nose if ever they were to try and harm them. And so in that instance, it's about associating the name to the good feelings, the good thoughts, the good appearance, the good person, not just connecting it to the bad one. And the moment you do that, the moment you can experience just even a dip in that emotional reaction, you know you can feel different about it. You know you can make that change. And again, that's part of the purpose of these sessions. That's it for the kind of talking bit. What I want to do now is take us through an exercise, a technique. This is one that when you listen back to it, if you want to jot down, don't make notes whilst we're doing it, because I really want you to be in the experience. But afterwards, you can, once I've loaded this up, you can listen back, you can write down the steps of this. In fact, I will put them up with the video, and that saves you the hassle. They'll just be there then. There's only 6-7 steps in this, and this technique is one that you can then use to help yourself with bad memories, with hurt, with pain associated to things in the past. For this, I'm going to use a little bit of hypnosis. For some of you in I Meditate, and that it's kind of going to seem very similar to what we've done there. We're not going to go deep. Hypnosis at the end of the day is just you focusing inwards on something. That's it. There's nothing more complicated than that. It's literally you taking time to actually proper focus within, rather than being distracted by everything that's going on outside. So to get the most from this next bit, just listen to the words I say, follow the instructions the best of your ability. If there's going to be there's bound to be noises and sounds around about you, they're not going to distract you. You know, they're there. They can allow them to be there. But before we go into this, and I've written this in big notes because I get carried away at this point and I always miss something. So I've written it in big in my notes. Do we all have a memory or a point in time that has some emotional pain, some emotional hurt connected to it that we would kind of like to feel differently about?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you asked 200 people that, you'd get 200 people that said yes. Doesn't have to be the biggest thing For now, this is about showing you and giving you the technique to be able to experience it differently, even if that's just 20 minutes after this session, you actually feel better about that. If you can feel better about it for 20 minutes, you can feel better about it for the rest of your life. So on a scale of 0 to 10, and I'm not going to go into each person's individual thing that you're bringing to it, but on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 is the emotional pain affects my life so much. I'm not living fully. I'm not functioning fully. It's crippling me in the same way as physical pain would, but it's emotional. And 0 is I have no emotional pain. I have attained perfection. On a scale of 0 to 10, just let me know whereabouts you are on that scale. You can either hold hands up to the camera and show me, or top it in the chat. There's a 10, and just remember what you're telling me. There's a 10. We've got a 6. Any more for any more? 7, 9, 6, 1. Is that a 1 there, Chris? I could only see the one hand. No. 6.5. Is that a half? That's brilliant. Excellent. Just remember those, because I mean, when it comes to pain of any kind, there's no real way of, it's not a tangible thing. It's not like it's something we can see. So that gives us just a rough scale of how you feel in relation to it. So what I'm going to ask you to do is just sit comfortably for a moment. That's right. And in a moment, I'm going to ask you to take a nice deep breath in. And when you do that, all you're going to have to do is close your eyes and go within for a while. Just relax however you do that best, because you know that. Take a nice deep breath in. Just breathing out now, just gently close your eyes. Allow those eyes to close and just go within. Focus within, and I want you to find within you that place that feels most comfortable and most still. And as you're aware of the temperature of the room, the sound of my voice, and whatever it is that you're sitting and lying upon, you can also become aware of that point within you that feels most comfortable, most relaxed. And just allow that feeling of relaxation to spin within you. And maybe you can remember times when you felt so relaxed, there was nothing to do, nothing to try, just to allow yourself to be in that place. And I wonder just how much more you can relax, because it's good to relax. The more we relax, the better we feel, and the better we feel, the more you can relax. So as you're listening to my voice, aware of the room round about you, and maybe you have thoughts, maybe thoughts about the memory that we've talked about, maybe about that emotional hurt, or maybe just wondering what's going to happen. But as you're having those thoughts, aware of the room about you, you can relax even more. Just allowing yourself to go within. There's nothing to do, nothing difficult to try. Just allowing the sound of my voice to guide you. Allowing yourself to turn within, to focus within, and give yourself this time for your healing. I want you to think of a memory connected to the pain that you've chosen to focus upon. Just really focus upon that memory. Connect to that memory. And in connecting to that memory, I'm sure you'll probably experience a little bit of that inner pain, that emotional pain as well. But focus on that memory connected to that pain, that if you were to perceive that differently, would allow you to release some of that pain. In fact, if you changed how you thought about that, would allow you to feel less of the pain connected to that moment in time. And I want you to go into that memory. I want you to go into that memory now and see the things you saw, hear the things you heard. Be aware of how you were breathing in that moment. Be aware of how you're standing in that moment, sitting in that moment. Notice your posture. Notice what's going on around you. even down to the temperature in the room, or if you're outside, inside. Just really step into that memory. And I'm imagining that as you're going into that memory, as a scene, however it appears to you, it probably feels big. It probably feels up close. So what I want you to do is just freeze the frame. Freeze frame that memory in that moment. Just freeze it. And now shrink it down. Shrink it down, shrink it down. Make it as small as you possibly can. You can still see it, but really shrink that down. And now once you've shrunk that down, made in that really, really small, I want you to jump to the end of that memory as though it was a movie. You've gone from that freeze frame. I want you to go to the end of that memory now, to the end of that movie, and freeze frame that moment where that memory that causes that pain ends, and just freeze it. Freeze it now, and imagine as you freeze that now, that there's a dial. And it's a whiteness dial. It's almost like the brilliance on the TV. It's a whiteness dial. And as you freeze that frame now, that end scene, I want you to grab that dial and I want you to turn it all the way up and very quickly white out that image so you cannot see it. White out that image so you cannot see it. Just a complete white blank screen. And now I want you to go back to that memory again, connect to it again. Look within, notice how it can feel different. Notice how it can feel different as you see that frame. Step into it. Step into that memory again. See what you were seeing, hear what you were hearing. Notice and smell everything about that memory again. And freeze it. Freeze that memory now at whatever point that is that caused that pain, and shrink it down again. Shrink it and make it smaller. Move it around so it has to be smaller as you shrink that down now. And once you've shrunk that, skip to the end of that memory, that point where that memory stops that causes that pain, and freeze it. Just freeze it again, freeze it now, and see that dial. Reach out for that dial and turn it all the way up again, turning that whiteness up full until that memory is just obliterated out by that brilliant whiteness. That's right. And again, go back to that memory. Go back to that memory. See it how you saw it, hear it how you heard it, feel it how it felt. Just find yourself in it. Notice things about it. Notice what's different, and then freeze that. Freeze that now and shrink it again. Shrink it all the way down so it's really small, just really minute. So small, in fact, that if almost would find it difficult to see. Almost difficult to see. It gets that small when you shrink it down. And once you've now shrunk that down, I want you to skip to the end of that memory again. Jump to the end of that memory to a point in time where that moment stopped. Where it ended, it no longer happens. And freeze it. Freeze it now, freeze frame it, and imagine again that dial, that whiteness dial, and turn it all the way up so that image is completely whited out, completely whited out. And now see yourself at the end of that memory. See yourself at the end of the memory, almost like you're standing at the end of a movie. And I want you to run it backwards. Run it backwards, see it backwards, hear it backwards. And when you feel those feelings coming up within you, I want you to spin them the opposite way. So if they're rising up, turn them around and spin them down. If they wrap around you, wrap them in the other direction. Play that movie through from the end to the beginning, backwards. See it all in reverse, see it all backwards. Spin those feelings in the opposite direction. And then when you've done that, jump to the end of the movie again, back at the end of the movie. And this time play it back even quicker right now, all the way back from the end to the beginning, faster this time, spinning it backwards, feelings, things you're seeing, everything in reverse, everything you're hearing in reverse, those feelings as they come up, turn them around, spin them the other way. They're your thoughts that are creating those feelings. You have control over those thoughts. Spin them in the opposite direction. Spin them so they have to feel different until you get to the beginning of that moment again. And now jump to the end again. We're going to do that one more time. Take those feelings, take that memory, and play it backwards from the end to the beginning, from that point to the beginning. reversed, everything being said backwards, people moving backwards, the event happening in reverse, your feelings that come up spinning around in the other day. So if they come up, they can go down. If they come at you, they can go out from you. Just spin them, move them, and get to that beginning point again. And when you're back at that beginning point, just take a nice deep breath in. And when you try to think of those bad memories, the more you do this, the harder it is for you to recall those bad feelings. In fact, whenever you think of those bad memories, the more you do this, the harder it is for you to recall those bad feelings. And the harder it is for you to recall those bad feelings, the harder it can be to connect with that memory in quite the same way. In quite the same way, you can feel less of what you felt before, as whenever you try to think of those bad memories, the more you do it, the harder it is for you to recall those bad feelings. The harder it is to recall those bad feelings, the better you can feel. And the better you can feel about that, the harder it is to recall those bad feelings. And in a moment, I'll count from 1 to 5. I want you to just, in that moment, come back out feeling refreshed, relaxed, revitalized. That's 1, every cell, fiber, and muscle of your body coming back to everyday consciousness. Number 2, feel a whoosh of energy from the tips of the toes, top of the head, energizing, refreshing, revitalizing. Number 3, just stretching, feeling good. 4, just gently opening your eyes, feeling great. And number 5, just eyes open, have a stretch, have a fidget. And immediately now, I want you to think about that memory. Notice how you're feeling now about that. And on a scale of 0 to 10, where is that now? Where is that bad feeling? Try to find that. And on a scale of 0 to 10, just with the hands again, just give me a signal to let me know where that's at for you. That's 5, so that's a little less, that's 4, 0. We've got some zeros there, that's marvelous. So in this moment now, you can feel differently about that memory. You have that control. These are just your thoughts that trigger those emotional reactions, and your thoughts are in your control. Now, for some of you, this session, just what we've done now, may be all that's ever needed for you to do. I'm going to post the video up again, and I'm going to post the steps that we've just gone through, because this is something you can use with any memories, with any time that you want to feel different about something that's happened in the past. So, like I said, you don't need me to take you through this. And I want you to practice it with other moments. Sometimes the emotional pain we feel isn't down to one single moment, it's a number of occasions. Work this technique with those occasions. Work it with those memories until you cannot, no matter how hard you try, you cannot feel that same way about how that made you feel in the past. So in concluding today's session, I want to just emphasize that real change takes place when we take that responsibility for our experiencing. Those feelings we have are created by us. Yes, there was an event that once made them happen, but we keep them alive. We keep that pain alive. We keep that hurt alive. But as you've seen, hopefully from today's technique, we can change how that feels. And you can choose how you wish to feel, how you wish to experience. And if you can do that, why would you definitely not want to choose to feel good now? That's pretty well this session. Like I said, they're short, they're tight. In a few weeks' time, I'm going to be running I'm going to start doing some morning retreats, connected with some of the subjects that we touch on in here, and they are going to be there'll be an emotional pain one, because that's something I think that we can all go into a lot more. So if that's something you'd be interested in, just post a comment up after this video going, oh yes, please let me know about that, and I will let you know once I've done the organizing bit in my own head for when it's happening. And yeah, feel free to post any questions. You might want to re-listen to the talking part of this again. So if you have any questions that come up from it, do feel free to post them up. If you're noticing, or as you notice in a few days' time, that you're still feeling better about that moment, that memory, just kind of give a thumbs up, say still working or something in the comments, so we know how this has benefited. Because the other thing is if we all share, those times when we make a change that we feel differently about something. You know, if in a week's time you kind of go, do you know what, I still do not feel so bad about that thing that happened, or it's not affecting me the same way, share that, because the changes we make individually by sharing them lets other people know that we can make a difference, we can change those things. At the end of the day, they're your thoughts, they're your feelings, and we have, if you can think about something one way, you can think about it in another. So I hope that's been good for you this evening. And like I say, I want to keep them concise. I notice Lisa's just dipped out because I know she had somewhere to be, so I've kind of kept that as concise as possible. But I'm going to do certainly one a week for the immediate future, so I will post up next week's. I think it's already up on the event thing as well, and the event's already there. So I hope that's been okay for you. If you've got anything you want to share at this point, I'll just stop the recording.